Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning. You're looking live at PodUp with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. I want to thank David Steele for the introduction, former voice of the Gators, now with the Orlando Magic. It's Thursday. You know what that means. We'll have our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter, Brent Beaird, talking college football. A lot to talk about. Second part of today's program, we'll have Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. Just get his thoughts on what he's seen or heard doing interviews with the Gator football players. Let's go to the Titan MR hotline, and we're joined by our Heisman Trophy. He's already breaking down tape to figure out who's going to vote for the Heisman. Good morning, Brent. How you doing, my man?
Well, it's an incredibly busy time right now. You would think that we would be able just to talk about camp, and we have a lot of camp stuff that we can talk about. But the expansion situation has gotten so out of control that, unfortunately, that is dominating right now. Now, obviously, the on-the-field stuff will catch up, and we'll push through that at some point. But again, for college football fans, there is the two things that get them excited beyond anything else. And the guys who run websites will tell you the same thing. They have more subscriptions during coaching changes and expansion than they do anything else that goes on the whole year.
Yeah, that is so true. We got a couple of questions already for you here, Brent, and it's regarding expansion and the semis. John says, Brent, FSU has made it clear they want out of the ACC. Who wants FSU is the question to him. And Andy wants to know, what conference do you think Florida State will be in the next 5 years?
Well, and again, everything we say about this has to be prefaced by the grant of rights, which goes through 2036. And can they get out of the grant of rights? They have certainly made it clear that they want out, and they've had enough. Well, and let me add this caveat. They want out, but if the deal was reconstructed to where they got more money than the other schools, or at least the majority of the other schools, would that be enough to pacify them? And we're not real sure about that. But what they said yesterday in their meeting with their officials had a lot to do with letting the Big Ten and the SEC know that they're looking to move. Now, see, if you get out of the exit fee by itself is $125 million. Now, I've also seen figures of like $300 million altogether for this and that for them to get out if they wanted to do that. Now, the other issue is, and I haven't seen anybody really write about this, but I'm going to give Andrea Adelson credit for it, is the thought that if Florida State leaves the ACC, wherever they go, let's just pretend they go to the Big Ten, well, they could play the Big Ten, play Big Ten schedule, but their money would still stay in the ACC. And the other question is, because of the grant of rights, would they be able to have their games televised if they went somewhere else? So I've seen the date, August 15th, that they've got to make a decision, and I think what basically this is, you've got to let conferences know you're ahead of time what you're going to do. But what we also haven't seen, and what we're trying to find out, is does FSU have a real plan in order to get out? And we've heard them say we want out, but we haven't heard any details, and we may not understand if we don't. And forgive me for making this long. But I mean, frankly, right now, Big 12, Big 10, SEC, I mean, any of those would fit. And again, we've got to remember, as Shane and I have talked for a while, geography means nothing anymore in expansion.
Do you think, I mean, I know that the SEC is probably going to expand again, or maybe not. I mean, but do you think they want Florida State?
I don't know that. I'll say this: is Florida State in the pecking order? I certainly don't deny that, but I think the reality of it is that they're looking at some other schools. So, well, look, number one, everybody wants Notre Dame. Number two, for the SEC, they really covet North Carolina and possibly Virginia or Duke. I know people are scratching their head. Why? Well, the why is the presidents and the chancellors want them. And what we can never forget here is the presidents and the chancellors are making the decisions. And they are really attracted to these schools that are AAU schools, which is that acronym for an elite academic school. So that is out there for now. And look, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm not saying this is no inside information. But I was talking to a consultant friend, and he even made the point earlier this week. If the SEC really wanted to expand their footprint, would they even go after a Washington and an Oregon or Arizona and Arizona State? Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. There's not even a rumor about that right now, but that was just something suggested to me earlier. And and to your point, OU and Texas coming in, Greg Sankey has been very clear that right now that's all they're concerned about. But look, Shane, you and I both know expansion is never dead. It's just dormant. And you know good and well that Greg Sankey and the SEC have a plan somewhere if these dominoes really get going in expansion.
Yeah, and so tell me what's going on if you know anything about Arizona. I keep hearing Arizona's making. I mean, who the hell really wants Arizona? But it seems like they're talking a lot of noise out there.
Well, I'll tell you real quick why. Is Arizona right now is like the number 11 television market, and the growth in that area has been unbelievable. I've checked on that this week because the same question came up: is why do they want? Why do people want those two schools? And that would that's a lot of it. Is because of the potential people see in that area, and don't think for a minute that now TV market's it's not the greatest thing here, but believe me, when it comes to television and ESPN and these other entities are involved with this, and they know all about where the TV markets are, and they know all about where the growth is going. So and if they move, probably Arizona State are going to move together to the same conference. So I'm trying not to muddy the waters here, but does that make some sense?
Yes, indeed. Speaking with Brent Beaird here on the Titan MR hotline. If you want to shoot us a text on the Titan MR text line, it's 352-353-7465. Got a text here, came in this morning, says, "Good morning, Shane. Catching up from yesterday's show with JC, and I wanted to let people know that Strickland was on the Gator Nation football podcast on Tuesday, and he said that they are not going to build a new stadium. He just said when the conversation started, they considered every possibility. His main goal is to modernize the game experience, but leave as much of the character as possible. There will be some reduction in capacity just due to widening the aisles and adding handrails to meet ADA requirements, but I don't think they're going to fill it with chairbacks and clubs. Sounds like he's more focused on the perimeter issues like concourses, restrooms, and points of sale." Appreciate that text. Yeah, that's what I had heard when somebody told me they had talked about possibly building a new stadium. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Because Brent, you've been around covering college football for a long time, and I've spoken with Buddy Martin, JC, some others on my program the last few days. I cannot remember when a Power 5 school actually said, we're going to build a new football stadium. Baylor did it. We came up with Baylor. Some people said Stanford. I believe Stanford just renovated the stadium they used to have, but it doesn't matter. You just don't see people just flat out building a new stadium in college football. Doesn't make any sense.
So it's rare. I agree with that very much. And look, the other thing you've got to keep in mind is if you're going to build a new stadium, A, how long is it going to take? And B, where's your team going to practice, play, and so forth during the time the new stadium is built? Let me throw this caveat in here, if I may, about expansion, and people need to keep their eye on this. The Arizona University Board of Regents has called an emergency meeting tonight. So we will know more. Now, again, that emergency meeting, remember, they're about, Shane, 3 hours behind us. So that meeting may not start to 7 o'clock, which is 10 o'clock here. So you may not know anything until the early part of the morning. But that tells you probably either they have been contacted. See, a big deal with this is these conferences are trying not to appear to be predatory, is the word that I've seen over and over again overnight. And predatory means that what they're trying to do, and this is almost comical at times, is the conferences are trying to make it appear that they had nothing to do with this, that the schools contacted them, and that was all there, and that's how this thing got started. So you got that going on, and there's another complication here that what we need to mention real quick is we've got, particularly with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, is, again, presidents and chancellors make this decision. Ohio State has no president. Northwestern's president is under fire for the investigation with the hazing. USC's chancellor is facing some issues after the resignation of their AD. Wisconsin's chancellor has only been on the job less than 4 months. So I'm not saying these people aren't smart enough to make decisions, but when you've got someone that's just joined or just made president or chancellor, that may be something we need to keep in mind too, Shane.
Rozogo State Farm Office is a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visit ograinsurance.com or give them a call at 352-240-1779. All right, Brent, let's head around the SEC. Let's start with Alabama. I believe they start practice today. Will be day one for them. Any news? Obviously the quarterback battles, everybody wants to know up in Tuscaloosa. What can you tell us?
Well, they've got a bunch of questions. Who's going to be the left tackle? Is that Eli Pritchard or Caden Proctor? Those are really good young players. And that's going to be very interesting. And we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. All kinds of guesses. The wide receivers really need to step it up. Alabama had 23 drop passes last year. The receivers had 16 of them. So that's got to change. Inside linebacker Tresman Marshall from Georgia comes over. Be interesting to see how he does. And Justin Jefferson or Pearl River Community College. Can Dallas Turner have a better year as edge rusher? I think they've got some pretty good tight ends, particularly the Maryland Dupree, their transfer. And last year, 103 penalties for Alabama, 23 of those on the offensive line, or 27 of them. So a lot of questions for the Crimson Tide.
Yes, for sure. A text on the Titan More text line from Darrow says, good morning, guys. Brent, I'd like to see Clemson in the SEC. They feel more like an SEC team. I think everybody thinks Clemson eventually will be in the SEC, but you got to have that other guy. It's always got to be an even number. And I'm not sure who that other guy would be, but we'll see. Arkansas, what's going on in Fayetteville?
Yeah, they're trying to figure out who the linebackers are going to be. They lost Drew Sanders and Bumper Poole. Bumper Poole, I think, played there about 6 years, but he was a tremendous player. Antonio Greer from South Florida is a transfer. Jamin Thomas from Cincinnati is another transfer. Can the defensive line be as good as it looks? They've got a real deep defensive line. Senior, redshirt senior, or super senior, so they've got a lot of experience on the defensive line. They're trying to really help their secondary. They added 5 transfers and 6 freshmen to the secondary. Now, the reason they did, Shay, you remember this last year? They were dead last at like 131 in passing yards allowed per game. They were really good on the front 7. They were terrible in the backfield. Jalen Cantillon got hurt, and that really hurt them too. And again, I'm not saying he's going to, but KJ Jefferson at quarterback has 2 years, not 1, but 2 years of eligibility left. He's in his 3rd year as starter, and Rocket Sanders has gained 10 pounds, and he's kept his speed. Shane, he's now up to 237.
Yeah, that's hard to believe because he can run. Arkansas, KJ Jefferson, it seems like he's been there more than 3 years. And as you said, has 2 more years of eligibility left. So we'll see what happens with the Hogs. But their secondary has been really bad. Auburn has really been doing a pretty good job here in the last week or so, flipping recruits. Is old Jimmy from Yellowwood opening up the checkbook, or what's going on?
Well, to answer your question, Auburn's got one of the biggest NILs of any school in the SEC. So yes, to that question, they flipped a commitment from Georgia and flipped a commitment from Alabama. So that this is they got a 5-star commitment, and this Reddick kid from Georgia, DeMarcus Reddick. It was the first 5-star commitment that Auburn had since 2019. So that tells you a little bit about what's going on with the program, but I think that's going to change under Hugh Freeze. Auburn got going yesterday. Quarterbacks, we think Peyton Thorne may be the guy from Michigan State. Robbie Ashford's still there. Holden Grenier is still there. Jarquez Hunter, as you know, got in some trouble in the offseason, but he'll play. It's just a matter of time. Brian Batty is a transfer they like a lot. The tight ends, Bravado Fairweather and Luke Deal. Got to figure out the left tackle. I think that's going to be Dylan Wade. And they've got some really good transfers on the offensive line. Center is Avery Jones and Connor Lou Jones, transfer from East Carolina. So the point of that is they've had a lot of transfers coming in to help them. So they've gotten off to, I think, a good start in many ways under Hugh Freeze.
Facebook Live brought to you by Metal Law. Tony, who cracks me up. He says, Brent, any news on the 1990 QB battle in Gainesville? Hearing it is between Kyle Morris, Lex Smith, Brian Fox, and some other kid.
Clever. That's pretty good, isn't it, Shane?
Yeah, that's pretty funny. There was one other deal here I wanted to read if I can find it. Here it is right here. This is from Nor, who lives in South Florida, Vero Beach. Keep hearing that UCF is growing so fast that they will be direct competition with the University of Florida. Orlando is growing in population like never before, over 900 new people into Florida each and every day. The Golden Knights have a great coach in Gus. It's kind of long here. Look, UCF is probably the biggest school in America right now, I think, or is close to it. I just when you say competition with Florida, no, Florida will always be the flagship university in the state, and we're in the SEC. And nothing against UCF, but you're talking apples and oranges. Do you agree with that?
Well, look, and let me say this, and I've been up front with this for years now. Gus Malzahn is not an elite football coach. If you track it, look, as coaches say, your record tells who you are. Gus Malzahn over the last umpteen years is averaging either 7-5 or 8-4. Now, I'm not saying Gus is not a good football coach, because he is, but we just need to we need to be careful not to call Gus an elite football coach because his record says otherwise. Now listen, I get the point about people moving in Florida. I mean, there are like 120 people that move into Jacksonville every day. So, I mean, his point, a lot of those points are good ones. I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. I just want to make the point about the coaching situation at UCF.
Florida Gators, what can you tell us about what's going on in Gainesville?
Well, I tell you, the more I listen to this, the more I hear. I'm not saying this team is going to win 10 games, but that I think people are going to be surprised at this team. I mean, what I've heard this week is they are more physically fit than they have in a while. I know there are a lot of guys, and I won't go through the list here, who are bigger and stronger, and that's very obvious. I've heard really good things on Graham Mertz about how he's steady, he's consistent, and man, that's what you want. He puts the ball on the money. You really want that, to say the least. They really like Jason Marshall. I think he's gained 7 pounds. And Ron Kearney, the freshman, I think he's going to stay at center. He's from Jacksonville. So look, I'm not saying again that they're going to win double-digit games. I'm heading more in change count right now that this team actually could be better than we think they are.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. Andy asked, he saw a report that Khalil Jackson's in the mix of starting receivers that possibly would start in front of our 4-star freshman. There's a possibility. Khalil's a good athlete, not very fast, kind of like his dad. I mean, he'll get some playing time, but I'm telling you, this receiving core, they got a lot of different elements to them that I like. Some guys that can make people miss, can flat out run. So he's not that type of player. He's more of a big, honestly, he's more of a guy that I'd put on the hip of the tight end and do some stuff with him because of his size. Georgia Bulldogs, Brent, what can you tell us about the 2-time defending champs going for a 3-peat?
They're ready to go. Now, they do have some injuries that they've got to be able to deal with. Small Mondon, their linebacker, is still not 100%. So some others are going to get some time. Brandon Robinson, the running back, he's close to being full speed. Kendall Milton, they're trying to get him going. He's got a hamstring injury that has plagued him his whole career, and they're trying to get that under control. I think that's been difficult. Obviously, the quarterback situation, Carson Beck, we still think is going to be the guy. You don't know. We'll see to where it goes. But they've just got up and going. And look, they're still dealing with this off-the-field stuff with the traffic thing going on in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution story about the violence with women. We haven't heard any more about that because these guys are on the team and practice has started, but we will certainly keep in touch with that. But Georgia, plenty of talent, easy schedule, and if you ask me now who's going to be in Atlanta, I'll tell you Georgia will.
Yeah. Let's move to LSU. LSU is the preseason pick to win the West, I believe. I could be wrong there. I can't remember who the media picked, but I don't want to say LSU, kind of flew under the radar last year in Brian Kelly's year 1, but do you think there could be a chance this year where, I don't want to say they have a letdown? I mean, I still think they're going to win 9 games or so, but they got to go to Tuscaloosa. Could they not have the year that people expect?
I don't know. They've got so much talent that is really amazing. And 5 of their last 6 games are at home, and the only road games in Tuscaloosa. So that's a real help for them. They did have a problem. Jimmy Lindsey, their defensive line coach, had some kind of a personal health issue that he has had to step away for a while. and they're having to kind of reshuffle that defensive staff a little bit. Mason Smith, 6'6", 315, got hurt early in the Florida State game. That's a name that you've got to watch. He and Harold Perkins are two of the best defensive players anywhere. And they've also got Oregon State transfer Omar Speights, who is a first-team All-Pac-12 linebacker. As if LSU needed more talent, but they do have it. They've got to figure out the rotation at defensive back and at running back. Jaden Daniels is a good running back, but who's going to carry the ball? Noah Kane, the Penn State transfer, Josh Williams, John Emery, I think get him academically eligible. And again, as Shane's pointed out, they've got not only one good quarterback in Jaden Daniels, they've actually got two in Garrett Nussmeier. Shane, I still say if Garrett Nussmeier was available, that he may even start for some SEC teams.
The Tennessee Vols, obviously we know what Josh Heupel has done. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I probably should have looked into this, but Brent, when Heupel was at UCF, wasn't there a period of time, I can't remember how many years he was there, but wasn't there a couple of years where they kind of went downhill and they were talking about firing him at UCF? Or am I dreaming that?
No. They had some ups and downs at UCF. I mean, it worked. Their offense was explosive in the whole 9 yards. But I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't. I would say consistently great, and that's just being honest. But they think he's going to be able to obviously continue that this year. A lot of people think they're going to take a step back, and
I'm one of those guys. I could be totally wrong, but I don't. I think they win like 8 games this year. I'm intrigued by what they do offensively because it's that Art Briles, Baylor fast, spread you out from sideline to sideline. And I'm anxious to see what Hendon Hooker coming off his injury. And I'm all over the place right now, but he's going to the NFL. The Detroit Lions, Mark Brunell, and those guys drafted him. But nobody that's ever come out of that type of system has ever done anything in the National Football League. Not that it matters, because it's basically a one-man read, and it's usually a freaking some type of go route or post because they spread you out and try to get you one-on-one. And you can shut that down if you can just stop the run. So I don't know. I'm not a Joe Milton guy. I've said it on this show multiple times. I've seen him play in college. Do you think there's any chance they play their $8 million quarterback if Joe Milton struggles early?
Well, I think they would almost have to do that, frankly, at some point. I think they'll be smart if they get him some help. Now, they've got a really good wide receiver room with Brew McCoy and Squirrel White and Ramil Keaton. They've got Dante Thornton, who is a Oregon transfer, so they're fine there. And look, offensively, they're going to be good. But I think Shane and I have been the caveat that we give to Tennessee is they weren't very good last year on defense. And until they get better defensively, they're not going to be where they want to be. They were one of the worst defensives in the league in third downs, and trying to get the other team off the field. Now, Keenan Pili at linebacker, that they've been impressed with him. Aaron Beasley is back. I won't go through the whole list here, but just to throw some names out. Tyler Barron is a defensive lineman that they like. Also, Byron Young is now in the NFL, so they've got to replace him. Omar Norman Lott is a defensive lineman they like. But, again, Shane, to your point, to me, the biggest keys were going to be can Joe Milton win and keep that job, and will the defense be better?
Yeah, one last team in the SEC East, South Carolina. I don't see it. I think they went 8-4 last year, maybe 8-5. My eyes tell me they're not a good football team. I saw what happened in the Swamp here last year, just got dismantled by the Gators. I know they beat Tennessee. That's when Hooker went down. And then they beat a Clemson team that had no chance because they were playing DJ Uiagalelei or whatever his name is. Do you think everybody's giving them all this love because of beating Tennessee and Clemson to close out the year?
Well, and in fairness, Shane Beamer has gotten his reputation because of what they've done in November, and that's what people remember. Now they have got a new offense coordinator in Dowell Loggins, came from the NFL. Their offense coordinator last year he didn't work at all. We don't know what Spencer Rattler's going to do. We think he'll be okay. Rattler's got the potential to be great one day, but we haven't seen that on a consistent basis at this point. But again, and defensively, their defensive line has got to get better. Now, Dak Joyner, there is going to be the running back. He's a tremendous athlete, one of the better ones in the SEC. He's added 13 pounds. He's 229. He's going to be the running back. But now get this. And Shane said this in Shane Beamer at SEC Media Days. 2 years in a row, we've been last in the league in turnovers. Now that's something that they've got to fix, Shane. Look, now the defense is number 2 in takeaways, but the offense is number 1 in turnovers. So can they get that fixed?
Yeah, I thought I read something where he and Will Muschamp had the same record through the same amount of years, and I don't know. I could be way wrong. I just don't see South Carolina. Yep. Real quick, Brent, a few nuggets before we get you out of here and get to Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun.
Yeah, I saw Kevin in Nashville. Yeah, I'm glad he's back, and look forward to reading what he has. A&M has started. They think that their offensive line, Cam Dewberry, Bryce Foster, and Ladian Robinson could be one of the best in the league. They've got maybe the best wide receiver room with Moose Muhammad and that crew. Chris Russell is back at linebacker. And again, they've got a really good quarterback, Connor Weigman. Will the defensive line be better? We think it is. And Bobby Petrino is still being allowed to run the offense. So Jimbo is kind of taking a back seat. I think, in case I didn't mention this, let me throw this out here. Under Jimbo, A&M is 27-0 and 16-0 in the league when they score 30 points or more. And when they score 30 points or less, they're 11-22 under Jimbo. Wow. That's a telling stat, isn't it, Shane?
Yeah, that's a good one for sure. Brent, great as always, my man. We ran out of time. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
And Shane, as we bring Kevin on, let me remind everybody, Arizona Board of Regents meeting tonight. It's an emergency meeting to make some decisions. We won't belabor the point here, but keep your eye on that, because not saying it is, but it could be a domino effect on some other teams.
Good stuff. That's Brent Beaird, our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter. Join us on the Titan Tomorrow hotline. Going to take a quick timeout. When we come back, we'll be joined by Gainesville Sun's Kevin Brockway. Get his thoughts on what he's seen at practice, what he's heard, who he's talked to, all that good stuff. You're watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peaceland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte.
Campus USA Credit Union.
QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, and watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, Silverback Concrete Co., Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Doreen Wibby, Realtor Caldwell Banker, MM Parish. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Aver and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Silver Cube Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Hi there, this is head ball coach Steve Spurrier, and I'm here with my wife Jerry and our good friend Sherry Houston, the executive director of the Ronald McDonald House Charities of North Central Florida. We're thrilled to announce that the 2-year anniversary of our restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, is coming up on August 14th. Last year, we had so much fun celebrating with everybody that we're doing it bigger and better this year. We're hosting a special dinner and celebration that will include a chef's choice of premium buffet or your favorite Spurrier Gridiron Grill menu, including a filet mignon carving station, shrimp and grits, short rib risotto, wonderful seafood options, and many dessert options also.
Like my famous chocolate chip cookies.
Proceeds being donated to the local Ronald McDonald House.
Thrilled to once again partner with Coach Jerry and the Spurrier Gridiron team to raise funds for the Ronald McDonald House, benefiting families and children experiencing medical emergencies.
Spurrier's Gridiron Grill will be donating 11% of all of our money from food and 66% of drink sales to the Ronald McDonald House.
Go to spurriers.com right now and reserve a ticket before they sell out.
We'll have wonderful food, special guests, and a limited edition of the 2nd year anniversary collector's coins, as well as prizes like a dinner with me and Jerry. We couldn't have become one of the busiest and most successful restaurants in the Southeast without your support. So we want to celebrate with the most important people of our team, and that's you.
I want to celebrate with some of those cookies. Do you have any of those?
Sure do. Right here for you.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in Celebration Point is the flagship restaurant of the Florida Gators, the hottest restaurant in Florida and the heart of Gator Nation. That's Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Check us out at spurriers.com. Don't forget, go there, get your tickets for, I think, next, the 14th, if that's a Monday, the 2-year anniversary of Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Let's go to the Titan More Hotline. We're joined by the Gainesville Sun's Kevin Brockway. Good morning, Kevin. How you doing, my man?
Good morning. Good to see you, Shane, as always.
Yeah, I got a Facebook Live here real quick I want to get to that Brett sent, brought to you by Meldon Law. He says, QB, I know you haven't been high on FSU this year. Saw a publication that the QB-RB combo of Travis and Benson was ranked #1 in the nation. What are your thoughts? It's not that I don't think they're a good football team. Again, I go back, they beat one team last year with a winning record. I think Jordan Travis, wonderful kid, extremely athletic. Do I think he's a great quarterback? No. Is he a good college quarterback? Yes. Majority of his game is with his legs. If you go back, if Florida could have just tackled him once or twice in the game, they win it, but he made us look like fools. But Benson's a very good tailback too. So they ain't beating Clemson, people. I'm telling you, they're not going to beat Clemson. So Kevin, how you doing?
Good,
I think the Gators have practiced 3 times now.
Yeah,
I know you guys don't get to get out there very. I saw you Monday at day 1, and I've had Edgar on, and I was telling him it's so funny when y'all get that little short. I don't know if it's like 5 or 10 minutes, ain't very long. You guys are scrambling like water bugs to different places, taking pictures, writing stuff down. But what have you seen that you liked or have not liked the first 3 days of practice?
Yeah, yesterday they did a little more contact, I thought, which was good. Obviously they had the, DBs, doing some tackling drills and the, wide receivers doing some blocking drills. So I think we're getting to the point where we're getting near pads, right? So certainly, I think Graham has been, certainly accurate. He's been sharp. I like I think the younger guys in particular, maybe not the transfers, but you watch some of these younger guys. Like I took a video of Andy Jean the other day, and the way he runs routes is, pretty advanced. Like it's very skillful. And I think you see that in the players that Napier has recruited in terms of, and maybe from the programs that they're from also, in terms of their football skill too. I think that's showing up a little bit. It was interesting. Austin Barber was talking about Najee Harris the other day, who, obviously started in the spring game. And he just talked about coming from IMG Academy and how advanced he was. And I think that's interesting. And I think you're seeing, certainly with the recruiting classes and the younger guys, not just necessarily, guys that have ability too, but guys that are pretty polished for a young age.
When I know you, like you said, you haven't been I've only been to one practice, and I wanted to go just to look at the receivers, all these young guys. I like them, Kevin. I could be wrong. I know I only saw them in one time. Just the way they run, the moves they can make in open space. Have those guys stood out to you at all?
Yeah, well, Andy Jean has really stood out to me, I think, since the spring. That's since the spring when I first saw him. And his hands too. I mean, he catches a lot of balls. He catches some tough balls in those sessions that we get a chance to see. I really like him a lot, and I think Aiden, he's a burner. I mean, he certainly has the speed. I think the question is, are the quarterbacks going to get him the ball right? I think we saw a little bit of that in the spring game where maybe some passes were underthrown to him, but he's another guy, obviously, that has a lot of ability. It's kind of disappointing that Eugene Wilson's been working out on the side. I was curious to see him. He hasn't taken live reps yet, but, talking to Ricky Pearsall in the summer, Ricky was really high on just his elusiveness, and a guy that can, even Billy Napier talked about yards after the catch with that guy, that he's really elusive. But, we haven't seen him in live drills yet, whatever issue that he has right now. He did catch some passes the other day and just kind of, receiver drills, but he hasn't taken part in the live drills with the quarterbacks yet.
And he says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Melon Law. Kevin, do you think Jack Pyburn will be on the field more this year? Billy talks about how big, fast, and stronger he's gotten.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that he'll be in the mix. Certainly, also, not only in defense, but on special teams. I think the depth on the defensive line, too, is something that's definitely worth watching. And, Austin Armstrong said the other day, 7 guys competing for 2 spots at defensive tackle. And the fact that you're going to have, that was a huge issue last year with Jervon playing, so many snaps last year. They didn't really trust the depth, right? Last year, this year, I think you've got guys with more ability where you're going to trust the depth in the front 7. And, I think they're hoping that that's going to result in a team that's fresher. And as you know, Shane, I mean, going to the altitude in week 1, I think you're going to really need that. You're going to need to bring guys in and out because it's going to be, a different element. Like last year, Utah coming to the humidity, this year, Florida going to the altitude.
Williams says on the Titan MR text line, asking you, Kevin, he says, Kevin, I wanted to get your thoughts on Jason Marshall Jr. I saw where he was all conference preseason. I just don't see it. Let me answer that first, and then I'll get your thoughts. I think he's outstanding. I think he's he is an NFL corner. What people don't understand is you're going to give up pass completions. That's just part of the job description. But so anyway, I answered the question. Give me your thoughts on Jason Marshall Jr.
I agree in terms of, you look at the pass breakups, right? He's Florida's best cover corner, by far, most experienced. You could maybe talk a little bit about the scheme last year too, Shane, in terms of how they played him. And the fact that Corey Raymond is going to oversee the whole secondary this year, whether there's going to be a difference in terms of, how many completions they give up underneath, or if they play a little more bump and run. But I think Jason Marshall is a guy, tremendous athlete. You talk about Gaines too. He was another one that, Billy Napier mentioned in the opening press conference in terms of, adding muscle while lowering body fat. Ricky Pearsall, I mean, just looks amazingly in really good shape too. And he was quick last year, but I think he looks quicker this year.
I got a question for you defensively. Obviously last year, we know the defense has been really bad. I love Austin Armstrong's enthusiasm. I think they're going to play a lot of more press coverage. They're going to play quarters press, kind of what you see Georgia and Alabama do. Safety play has been an issue. Do you think the Moton kid steps in right away and makes a difference?
Yeah, I think I like Miguel Mitchell because I just like his speed. I think they need more speed back there, and I think Mitchell is the most athletic. I don't know about Moton yet in terms of his speed. I think Jaden Hill at the star, brings a little more speed and coverage ability too, but that was a huge issue. I mean, we saw that, Shane, last year at the Combine, right? They both ran 4.7s, Torrance and Trey Dean. And I think, too, the communication, again, Corey Raymond coaching the whole secondary, I think that will help as well. But I think Moton, with his experience in the Big Ten, will definitely be in the mix. And and Moton's a physical guy too. He's gonna whack you. I mean, that was his MO at Michigan. I caused a lot of fumbles. So I think he and Kamari Wilson are two guys at the strong safety spot that are going to be battling it out. And maybe you could drop him into free safety. But I like Miguel, and I think the coaching staff likes Miguel a lot too at the free safety, just in terms of his athleticism.
Peachland Dentistry, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Go visit them at peachlanddental.com. We're speaking with Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun on the Titan MR hotline. We got a text on the Titan MR text line. This is from an earlier conversation I was having with Brent Beaird. Jason from Pensacola says, about your remark about Clemson coming to the SEC, does it still have to be another school to make it even with the divisions going away? Great point. I mentioned if you brought Clemson in, you had to find somebody else. But now that divisions are going away, it doesn't matter if you have an odd number. Would you agree with that now? Doesn't matter? Yeah. You don't need an even number anymore.
I would too. Blake Toppelmeyer, who's our columnist, was talking about UCF. I mean, bringing them in, which would be interesting. Or doing, a swap with some Big 12 teams, maybe getting rid of Missouri and getting TCU. But it's going to be, it's really going to be nuts with Clemson because, you've got the grant of rights deal. Obviously, it's the same thing with Florida State too. And I think they just have to weigh the cost on the whole matter. Is the amount of money that they're going to give up worth, joining a new super conference in the SEC, or can their lawyers kind of finagle their way out of it? But I think Clemson would be a great fit for the SEC. I think that one of the reasons why they've dominated the ACC pretty much over the last, decade is I think they're an SEC style team playing in the ACC. I mean, they're just the most physical team, right? I mean, they do the best job recruiting the front seven, recruiting the offensive line, and I think they would fit in really well in the conference.
Speaking of Austin Barber, when I saw him the other day, it looked like to me he is kind of leaned up. I don't know if it just because he wasn't in pads or what. Is he speaking today to the media, or did he speak previously? But did he talk about anything he did differently to get ready for this season?
Yeah, no, we got him the other day, and he talked a little bit about his diet and his training and so forth. And he did, you looked at his stomach, and he definitely looked leaner. And, to play left tackle, hey, you've got to be agile, right? You've got to, that's your job to protect the quarterback on the blind side. And I think Edgar asked him a little bit about, playing more on the left and moving to the left, but he basically said that was his natural position in high school. So he's used to it. And that's going to be important. And I think the thing too with Austin is, he's really taking on that leadership role as, the best offensive lineman. He wants to be a leader too, because, I think Osiris last year obviously was the best offensive lineman, All-American. But was he that Pied Piper type? I'm not 100% sure that he was. And I think Austin's kind of got that personality too, where he can kind of galvanize that group. Mazuka, is still in his non-contact jersey, but he is working out, and he is, doing some blocking drills and a little bit of contact. But Najee Harris, I'm telling you, the coaching staff is just really high on his ability and him being advanced. So I think he's going to push Mazuka for that job at left guard, excuse me.
On the Titan MR text line, George from Omaha, Nebraska asked, Kevin, has Billy mentioned anything about the preparing for the altitude in Salt Lake City?
I've brought it up a few times, and he really hasn't engaged or talked much about it. I mean, I first asked him about it in May, and I think he was asked also in the SEC Media Days, but I just think that he thinks that if the team is well conditioned and the team is well prepared, and if the team is deeper too, that's going to mitigate some of it. The fact that, and particularly on defense, having, trust in more guys. I think TJ Searcy and Kelby Collins are going to play too. I think they're going to be in the mix in that defensive line. I think that they'll be able to rotate in with some snaps. And I think you've got Justice Spoon and Tyreek Sapp. You've got some options there. Certainly. And then, inside with Caleb Jenks, Cam Jackson, and Des Watson, where you're going to be able to rotate guys for more snaps. And, that they're going to hope with the altitude that they're going to be definitely fresher on the defensive end.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in on that because, playing the Denver Broncos at Mile High. I don't even know what their new stadium. I don't know if they still call it Mile High or whatever. There was no preparation for the altitude in the National Football League. It's just like everybody talks about when Buffalo or whoever has to go down to Miami and play in the heat. No, you just do your normal drinking during the week, drinking water or Gatorade, that is. So I think people make a bigger deal out of it than it really is. Because, I mean, you really can't prepare for it. And like I said, Denver's at a higher elevation than Salt Lake City. And they're only going out, they're doing, it's a normal routine. Game is on Thursday, they're traveling on Wednesday. They're not going out a day early or anything like that. So Buck says Billy's been to Utah with Arizona State. Will be prepared for altitude. Yeah, this dude leaves no stone unturned. So he and the nutritionists and the doctors and everything, they'll have these boys ready to roll. All right, Kevin, before we let you go, you got any good storylines that you're writing about for the next couple of days?
Well, I got something today about a little bit about the team chemistry, the Know Your Teammates quiz, which I thought was interesting. And I think Billy's really fostered that over the last 2 years, but I think they've taken it to heart this year, and particularly with 34 new scholarship faces, having to mesh them in, just a little bit more of the offseason chemistry and maybe the buy-in, which wasn't always there last year. We saw certainly, and part of that is when you inherit players from a different coaching staff, you've probably got more, obviously of Billy's guys between the transfer portal now and obviously the two recruiting classes. I mean, there's still a few holdovers. I mean, Kingsley obviously was a Dan Mullen recruit, for example, but he seems to be bought in. But I think the guys that have stuck in from the previous regime are bought in, and now you're having new guys that are bought in, and maybe it will result in crisper football. But as you know, Shane, it comes down to talent too, right? And that's going to be the telltale also, and experience. And I still think this is a pretty young team that's probably trending younger. It's going to rely more on younger players, so I think there's still going to be some growing pains with that.
You mentioned a good thing there. There's over 50 new players on this roster, I believe. I mean, huge turnover.
With
Billy getting his type of players. I don't know the exact number, but not putting you on the spot, and you may or may not know this. How many Mullen recruits are still on this roster?
I'd say probably about a dozen, maybe at most. As an estimation. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but I would say probably about maybe 10 to 12. But most of these are Billy's guys. I mean, I think that. Like Kingsley is an example. Jason Marshall, obviously, is an example. There's still a few starters sprinkled here and there that were recruited by Dan Mullen, but I think most of them are Billy's guys. And I think we saw last year, right? The guys that performed pretty well were Billy's guys.
The best players were Billy's guys. So that's why I tell everybody, trust the evaluation process when they evaluate players and bring them in, and we'll see if we win games. So keeping our fingers crossed there. Kevin, great stuff as always. Let them know how they can follow you on Twitter and read your stuff at the Gainesville Sun.
Yeah, Gatorsports.com and at Kevin Brockway G1 on Twitter.
All right, good stuff as always. Appreciate your time, Kevin. Have a good day, my man.
Thanks, Shane.
That's Kevin Brockway of the Gainesville Sun. Join us on the Titan Tomorrow Hotline. Let's get to This Day in Sports, brought to you by our good friends at Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. In 1852, America's first intercollegiate sporting event takes place as the Harvard rowing crew beats Yale by 2 lengths. That was the first intercollegiate sporting event in 1852, which is brought to you by our good friends at Campus USA Credit Union. Again, I want to thank Kevin Brockway and Brent Beaird for joining us on the Titan Tomorrow Hotline. Silverback Concrete is a family-led team of heavy concrete specialists that build commercial structures with unrivaled quality. Silverback Concrete, you stand on it, we stand by it. Tomorrow's program will have JC, and we'll have Steve Palazzolo from Pro Football Focus. Get your NFL questions ready, folks. And if you got any questions about college ball, he covers that as well. Have a great day. See you tomorrow. Take care.